wacheni kiburi, wacheni madharau, wacheni matusi, endeni mupange mambo ya serikali. Bei ya mafuta imepanda, wananchi wanataka iteremuke. Hii bei ya mafuta wameongeza mpaka mafuta taa. Walete bill next week waangushe bei ya mafuta. Hiyo sisi wabunge 150 wenye tuko mlengo wa naibu wa rais tutaunga mkono kuhakikisha bei ya mafuta taa ya petroli imeshuka, mwananchi wa kawaida asiumie. Au sio?
We can no longer accept and we can no longer entertain the thought of increasing the prices of fuel products in the country of Kenya. We are giving them an ultimatum. Within 1 day, leo hii ikiisha, lazima waite mkutano wa dharura na waondoe hiyo maneno ya kuongeza kodi katika mafuta. Watu wetu ya bodaboda wanaumia, watu wetu wa matatu wanaumia, wameumizwa na corona, wako na loans kwa bank, and it is very, very uncouth for the government to purport to increase the prices of fuel products.
Okay. All right. So we'll get back to the conversation about subsidies and stabilization fund. But allow me to ask you this, Honorable Gov't, because this will actually sound like note to self if you had to reflect on what they were saying at that time versus now. I mean, everything they were talking about against, it has happened. The leader of majority now, of course, that time he was just MP of Kikuyu, was saying that they would bring a bill in Parliament to lower the prices. How do you explain this? Or does politics change people, or people change with politics?
Like I did say earlier, Sam, the price of oil is a global phenomenon. These are things that are beyond our control as a country in Kenya, because we do not produce oil. And I have said it will only be safe to focus now on subsidizing, on production, on the things that we are able to.
So they didn't know that time, or your campaign didn't know that time? That's
a distraction. I don't want to focus on that. You see, we've been elected, Sam. Let us not focus on what people said before campaigns. Now we're on the table.
That time, acting as the opposition or the government in waiting, you had ideas on what to do.
Absolutely.
The right thing to do.
Yes.
Now you're in government, the explanation is changing.
Yeah, because, I mean, we are hit by reality. This is a reality. The prices are being driven by, it's a global phenomenon. It's something beyond our control, what is happening globally. It's explained what is happening in the region. And I don't know, and which I really hope that Honorable Cairo, being a colleague, should have been able to explain, is also to come in and help. We belong to this country. Let us hear solutions that come from the opposition. Opposition should not just critique like Okongo does. You know, Cairo is a brilliant economist. We expect him to tap, Okongo, sorry. We expect him to explain to the country that these are some of the solutions that you can use. But to perpetually critique...
You know, Honorable Gov't, I like what you're saying. Because you were the opposition that time.
Yeah, but
hold on. It is just last year. I mean, it's Kitambo Sana.
Yes.
It's just last year.
Yes.
And you had ideas on what to do.
Yes.
You're now asking for ideas from the opposition. Why can't you implement the prescription you had?
That's what I've said. And like I said, let me even correct the statement that I had made earlier of 650 billion. It's actually 60 billion that was used at that time.
The subsidy.
For the subsidy. And I was saying that has been pulled now to get into production. So that you subsidize things that will make the people of this country afford. Food inflation has come down. Even though it's not to the level that we expect, it has come down. For what reason? Like I said before, because of the cost of fertilizer coming from 7,000 to 2,500. Fuel will continue being expensive. You know why? Even shortly, because of dirty, the pollution, shortly it is going to attract even other penalties, fuel, because of dirty energy that is in fuel. We're going to attract other penalties. The only way...
From who?
From government.
Globally, it's going to happen.
No.
Yeah. Carbon penalties.
From who?
Carbon penalties is imposed.
Right to the country.
No, it's government to do it.
Carbon penalties is done globally.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You're saying that it's going to apply.
Not in Kenya. I'm not saying in Kenya. I'm saying it is not sustainable to go into dirty energy. At some point in time, we will have to focus on green energy. That is where the cost will come down.
So what will be the green energy to commute, to transport goods?
You use electric vehicles.
When?
That's what's happening globally. The president even the other day launched electric border borders. That is where the world is. You know, even yesterday, there was a demonstration in the US because of the cost of fuel.
So you foresee a situation where we'll be transporting goods, say, from Mombasa to Malaba on electric vehicles?
Why not? Why not even use electric trains?
When is that?
I don't know. That is where we should be going. That is where, as a country, we should be thinking. We just had
we have a current problem.
We just had a climate summit in this country.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Some of the things that we discussed is how, as a country, as a region, as Africa, as a global south, what are we supposed to do to make sure that we are able to use green energy to sustain the cost of transport
so
in the near future.
Before you get those electric vehicles, at the moment, Kenyans on their own?
They are not on their own. It's really explained so well on what is happening on the pump stabilization.
Government, you are...
Pump stabilization. And to say, to simply focus on Kenya as if fuel has only increased in Kenya is to be very unfair. Look at the prices within the region, Sam. And let me just read some of the region in the East Africa. Okay. The fuel in per liter, okay, petrol, in Uganda is trading at 200.35. In Tanzania, that is Kenya shilling. In Tanzania, it's 187.68. In Rwanda, it's 200.62. In South Africa, it is 187.47. In Zambia, it's 210. In the UK, it's 278. Which I was there last week, and there's a lot of complaint in the UK as well. In France, it's 320. Okay? In the USA, it is 223. In Zimbabwe, it's 227. So we must be very honest. You know, we cannot be discussing issues as if we are isolated from the rest of the globe.
Cheaper in the region.
Sorry?
You have cheaper fuel in the region.
Of course.
So how do you explain that? I mean, the fuel to Uganda passes through Kenya.
But I think they also have a program of fuel subsidy, which is probably gobbling a lot of money. But look at it in the coming weeks. Okay. And also globally, if you look last week, a liter of fuel per barrel has been trading at 90, up from $80. So those are some of the dynamics.
Okay. So, Senator Kero, do we have a solution here? Is there a possibility? Because he makes a case against subsidies, but also a case about stabilization, which is no longer there. I've not seen it in the current April release.
First of all, I think it's important to get facts correctly. The most authoritative source of information regarding energy is the International Energy Association. The price of oil in the last 2 months has only gone up globally by 5%, from 85 to 90. And the outlook is that for the remaining quarter...
From 80 to 90.
85 to 90. From IEA, you can get it from their site. And going forward, they're estimating that it will stabilize to 87 for the next quarter. So where this story about 10 shilling coming to 260, CSs are getting from, I don't know where they're getting that story from. Number two, the CS Energy also lied to Parliament. The total amount of production cuts by OPEC countries and others amounts to, according to IEA, was only 2 million for the whole of 2023. And they said that has been offset by increase in supply from other countries that have not, that did not subscribe to that, like Iran and others, by 1.9 million. So actually the net is just a cut of about 100. That's not significant. So to tell Kenyans that, stories, and I think this is the problem with this government, please don't give information. They should stop lying to Kenyans. That is the biggest problem. Number two, I agree with him that we need to find solutions to this matter. The challenge we have on petroleum, which at that time the government was being told they were wrong, is on what constitutes the pricing. There's a pricing formula set up by the government. And when you look at that pricing formula, after that increase of 8% of the VAT, nearly 55% of the total cost of this fuel is government taxes and levies. So if government wants to really, help Kenyans, is to reduce this appetite for revenue. For heaven's sake, the challenge you have in this country is from the day you are sworn in, the focus has been we want revenue, 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 revenue. Nobody's talking about how to cut down the public expenditure, the wastage, the inefficiencies, people traveling day and night, adding no value to this country. So if you reduce this appetite for revenue, really, and we focus on how to rationalize on expenditure, then you can say, out of this 55%, let's remove some of these taxes, let us reduce some of these levies on petroleum. You can reduce the cost of the fuel. You can. And because cost, let me tell you, energy drives the entire economy of any country. Any country, if you want to develop, the cost of energy, that is why you find countries like China, US, and all over the world, these big economies focusing on energy across the world, their main focus in their relationship with other countries is about energy. So we have a challenge in this country where the cost of power is one of the highest in the country. Now you're adding fuel, which is going to make the matters even worse. Then you have the cost of corruption, which is getting worse. According to the head of public service, it's now on an industrial scale. Then you have taxes, unlimited. You know, you've just finished signing the finance bill with over dozens of new taxes. Now you're proposing dozens, including what the minister is just saying, the MPs said now about carbon tax. For heaven's sake, you live in third world. Don't think after holding that climate conference you're living in Europe or America. Come down to reality. Forget about talking of electric cars. Your people are still unable to make a motorcycle or even a bicycle or even a wheelbarrow. So if you start thinking about 2030, they are forming a task force. By 2030, there'll be the government doesn't want to allow vehicles on petrol and diesel. We want vehicles to be on. I mean, really, you guys are living in euphoria. Let's come down to earth. If you want to reduce the cost of energy, you can. Stop these IPPs. You have the cheapest energy in the world, geothermal. If there's political will, and you can get the cost of energy the cheapest and the greenest, we don't want to do it. We want to sign on to new IPPs. I mean, where do you want to go? Where do you want to take this country? The power collapses and the CS goes to Parliament in broad daylight and tells them that's normal. Power outage is nothing unusual. I mean, it's not the way to deal with a country, its economy. So in my view, there is need to review really some of the expenses. That unless government focuses on their own priorities in this country and focus on the needs of the people, their people, forget about other people. Don't do things because Americans want it. Don't do things because you want to invite somebody from investor from outside. Do what you need to do to help the people of this country, to make their lives easy, to make their lives cheaper. I think that is where the focus should be.
He spoke about subsidies and why they are bad. So, what can the government do?
You see, I was in petroleum industry. I was an oil marketer for more than 10 years until recently. I'll tell you this. What he says is true regarding when you introduce that subsidy at that level, the people who benefit are the oil marketers. It is at that level that the government can introduce because those are the importers. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are at the outlet level, if I am a marketer, say I'm Rubis, I have imported, the government has given a subsidy, I have not been paid 20 shillings for every litre. The government is going to pay me later. I have to worry about whether I should be able to sell that fuel to him as an outlet in Kiambu. You know, and I have not. So I would rather sell that fuel at my station. This was the challenge they were having, which is a fact. But I think the question of the challenges he mentioned is about how to operationalize that subsidy. That's where the challenge is. And for a long time we have been talking about, for example, if they put a capping on the wholesale, that would help them. For them, the concern is if there's a subsidy and there's no fixed wholesale price, then they lose big time. You know, and I think if that is something which under law, under the 2010 Act on the price control for fuel, the government is supposed to have the pricing cap for wholesale also. But that formula is there. But they're not applying it, they're not introducing it. So they only set the retail prices. And for them, they have to buy from the marketers. And the marketers would sell at whatever price they want. So they're not directly going to benefit. But again, the challenge he mentioned is about the government's inability to pay the oil marketers when there is a subsidy. For example, the one of last year, you know, areas built up to 6 years until they ended up this bond and they're losing money. But if the government's priority, and that's why I said it's about priority, this is critical for the entire economy. So if you offer a subsidy of 20 billion on petroleum, please give them that check of 20 billion. You can get 20 billion out of 3 trillion that you're collecting every day. You can't. That's not the challenge, is not about lack of money. It's lack of priorities. So I think in my view, that is where the challenge is. And if the focus is on the government appreciates this thing is critical, they can actually pay that money and we'll have a cost achievement or remove some of those levies and taxes. And that's something that as opposition last year, they had actually come up with a proposal to remove some of those things, but eventually it did not see the light of the day.
Interesting. So Let's listen to the Cabinet Secretary and the Director General of EPRA as they faced Parliament last week.
There's nothing much we can do about. There's been some 3.6 million barrels cut on daily basis, about 4%, 3.6 to 4%. And it's just unfortunate that we don't have our own product as a country. And we are likely to even be going to harder times because of these are Platts prices from OPEC.
So the movement of 1 shilling, in terms of 1 shilling to the dollar, is an additional 300 to 350 million shillings that will be passed on to consumers at the pump. But the spike is a global spike. It is a spike that has been seen across the globe. Further, we have seen this happen in our region.
Okay, so Chomba, I'll get to you, Fred. But Chomba, so that will do explain, but also later on they spoke about the stabilization fund they have been using. Where has it disappeared to in this month's prices?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that I really empathize with the common person because of the price of fuel in the country. And then again, I also find the government in a catch-22 as well. The stabilization levy, that is petroleum development levy, is 5 shillings and 40 cents per litre. So when you add that money, and because it's levied on the litre that is consumed every day. So you'll find that the stabilization, or rather the money that they would need to stabilize, is way higher than what they are levying, what the law allows them to levy, the 5 shillings and 40 cents. So once they stabilize in 1 month, the kitty is depleted.
But it's collected every month, isn't it?
It's collected every month, but not to the level of the subsidy. You see, for instance, if today we want to...
I'm not talking about the subsidy, I'm talking about
the stabilization.
So the stabilization was there for 1 month.
Yes.
Where has it disappeared to? Because I would imagine that previously, because it has not been implemented,
yes,
that money should be somewhere.
Okay, I would not speak for them, but what I know is there are supposed to be some 5 shillings and 40 cents that is being collected now for every litre that we are consuming. That money is supposed to go and stabilize the market. Unfortunately, sometimes this is now where now you get to understand what's happened. Like now, if we were to stabilize the market, we would have stabilized with 17 shillings. So maybe what I would have expected, probably what they would have done, is out of the probable 17 shillings, 16 shillings hike, maybe they give that stabilization of 5 shillings and 40 cents. Into the mechanics of how they have done it, I am not privy to that. Okay. But that is what stabilization is all about. 5 shillings and 40 cents by every litre to be plowed back in the times of extremities in astronomical rises of fuel prices.
And you look at the cost analysis, and the landed cost, for instance, for a litre of petrol is 115 shillings. Who calculates that? That is calculated by the you see, the reason why EPRA is in place, in my view, is for only 2 things. One, because energy and petroleum is a matter of national security. It cannot be left for people to import at will. So it must be regulated. The EPRA must know that Kero is bringing this amount of fuel, so and so it's to make sure that the country is running and we have enough fuel. But while at it, they get to know that you have imported at this amount. That's why you must be told to sell at this amount. The calculation of petroleum products in terms of landing costs, it's directly as a result of the cost of importation, how much they buy out there. Today we have things that we call premium. He'll tell you we have premiums which are constant, right, because of G2G, which have been negotiated that they are constant. But we also have other costs like freight and insurance and such. Sorry, what do you mean constant?
When the government negotiated G2G arrangement of importation of fuel, there are things that had to be constant.
Like what?
The premiums, the premium cost of petroleum, that had to be constant.
Let me explain.
Please explain what that is.
Let me explain that. You see, when we had the OTS, the open tender system, before the government got involved into this, when a company bids to supply the shipment for this month, the cargo for this month, they would base it on the mean average price, for example, in Abu Dhabi, which is known. I mean, it's traded products, so you have the mean average, is a well-known thing. So you would only need to quote your premium. On top of that mean average of the market, what is your premium you're going to charge? Say it's $20 per cubic meter or something. Now, under this G2G thing, because of the fact that this is a credit, it's a delayed payment of 6 months, those companies involved, Aramco and so forth, charged a very high premium. And I can tell you this because I have the figures. You know, when the average premium, for example, on PMS, on petrol, was around $33 throughout in the OTS, under this arrangement, it was almost $98 premium. So part of the high cost of fuel, actually, is not because of the global prices, but the premium that is being charged under the G2G by these companies that the government decided to contract on credit. I think that's basically what he means, that those figures are in that contract, and you are paying month on month at that $97.50, for example, for petroleum, and 118 almost premium dollars per cubic meter on the diesel and so forth. So if members of parliament were privy to the contract, you see the problem with governments is certain things which are very important are not shared with the public. If MPs had a chance to scrutinize that contract, you would see that this thing is not in favor of this country. What was sold by CS at the time was that this is not about the pricing, it's about bringing the dollar down. And that also didn't work. So our challenge now is not about the global price, it's about the dollar, which is the main reason why our prices are very high, and the premium by this G2G deal. These are the reasons why we're having this crisis, plus the taxes. Those are the three things which contribute to this. Otherwise, if you, in fact, Sam, if you look at globally, and I've argued on this, in the last 10 years, the price of crude globally has only changed by 4%. But our oil locally pump has gone from 80 in 2014, 80 shillings to almost 211. So this increase has nothing to do with the global price. It's about those dynamics of the taxes, of the forex, you know, the shilling value, and all those things which are. So this is right.
Is there a chance of walking back?
The canvas, if you allow me.
You can't go back on the dollar, for example. It's not easy because I mean that's not going to be easy. The only thing the government can go back is on tax issues, really. And now with IMF and all the reason why you're having all this thing about stabilization not being done, which Nelson should tell us, is basically about the IMF, really. You've gone into a situation where, as Ndee says, we're in a receivership, and so now, you know, the IMF's conditionalities.
The G2G, no chance of walking back?
No, there is. I think they have been discussing in the last few months on how to, but those are companies in business, you know, so I think they need to. In my view, the OTS was working very effectively and very efficiently. The only reason was that the government thought, with every new government that comes in wants to do its own things.
Okay. Just hold on. You speak about the price hikes between 2014 and now. Over the last 12 months, the increment on a litre of petrol has been 52 shillings, diesel has been 61 shillings, kerosene has been 74 shillings in 1 year. So, Fred, do you think there's a solution out of this?
I think, before I answer that, you see, if you listen to the questions that are put to the government officials, particularly the CSs in charge, the MD of parastatals in charge, they say that there is nothing they can do about it. And I say they have surrendered. Now, this tells you that actually the race to the bottom is real. You know, this regime told us that they have what is called bottom-up economic model. And that means they are taking care of the most vulnerable. But they are forgetting also their assumed office by affirming faithfulness to the same people that they represent. They have not done that. Now, even if you are to compare in the region, as Honorable Koech was saying, it is clear, even in the region, it is cheaper. They are now comparing with UK and US, which is higher. But they're forgetting that with all these increments and the percentages you have given, they have tried to run a propaganda. And history teaches us that, you know, you cannot manage an economy through propaganda. Because the moment the macroeconomic fundamentals are weak, then the exchange rate will definitely expose you. And now they are being exposed. Let me give an example, Sam. The price of 1 kg of sugar has gone up. The price of 1 kg of loose maize has gone up. The single room rent for that hustler that voted for them has gone up. The dollar versus the Kenya shilling, there's a problem. So all these have exposed this regime because they have been using propaganda to run the economy. You have now asked a question, do we think there's a solution? Yes, we do. How? We are saying that in the interim, the government of the day, the regime, should focus on lowering the cost of fuel. They have been telling us that, we will give you fertilizer. We strongly believe that when, as senators put it, when these subsidies are properly managed, in the interim, they can cushion the people of Kenya. Because you see, when a government official tells Kenyans, whether it is true or not, but you are actually selling fear that in the next few months, till February next year, prepare for the increment of 10 shillings per month. Already, it is high.
Right.
Honorable Gov't has told us that we should now start using electric cars. One of the things that have exposed them is this issue of electricity. 50 kilowatts has gone up by, I think, over 60%. So, when you are going to charge this vehicle, electric car, and the cost of electricity is already up, what are you trying to tell people? You cannot manage it. For us in Azimio, we strongly believe that there's a solution. And the solution that we've been telling people in the interim, even as we address those global dynamics, let's go back to the subsidy, manage the subsidy in the interim.
Okay. I want us to transition, but before you do, Nelson Gov't, what would it take then to really get a solution? It's because I have heard you saying that you're subsidizing production on this other side, but if the prices of fuel product are to continue going up, then already you've seen the impact on the transport sector. That will be shortly transferred to the consumer when they get the goods, because the transport cost is serious, the production cost as well is serious. What do you think as a solution?
Like Senator Bill Okero says, the government has negotiated for a reduction of the premium for supply of petroleum, and where we hope to achieve a discount of up to USD 30 shillings, $30 per liter. That effectively will mean that the prices of reduction of pump price by as much as up to 6 shillings. So those are some of the things that are being done in the short term. But of course, there has to be a better long-term solution. And unfortunately, however, like I did indicate, I'm not an expert in petroleum, but if it will continue this way, the global prices continue rising, then as a country we'll have to sit down and figure out what to do so that we cushion the common person.
Are you concerned? Because this question of government to government, we've been asking about it on the show for many months, and there never appears to be any parliamentarian who really understands fully what it was about. Are you concerned that we have gotten into deals that the people's representatives are not aware about?
It was information that we got. I'm sure the Energy Committee in Parliament is seized of this information. Honorable Kawaya is an extremely active member. And I think at that point, like most of the speakers here have said, it was to find a way of bringing down the figure. And of course, on the face of the pressure of the dollar to the shilling, it was probably necessary at that point to engage into that discussion. Like he's saying, the dollar is yet to stabilize and the fuel price is going up. So we definitely need to relook at the entire agreement.
That's what I'm asking. Look, we are relooking something we don't even understand. You're saying Kawaya is the chairman of the Energy Committee, but that's one member of Parliament. You're 349 of yourselves.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, from my perspective as a legislator, when I look at it, from that point, it was very important to enter into such arrangement because it was, first of all, giving us, lifting the pressure because you didn't have to pay for 6 months. So, of course, it was lifting the pressure for the demand of the dollar every month. You know, there used to be a fight every month for the dollar. And these are traders.
And the promise then was that the dollar would actually become cheaper, less than 120 shillings, according to the president.
That is why we are saying we need to relook at it. There needs to be a renegotiation. If
Parliament had sufficient information, do you think it would have had an opportunity to advise accordingly or take a position?
Absolutely.
You see, Sam, that deal, with all due respect, that deal was driven by the desire to make money by people in this government, as a fact. It's a rent-seeking deal. It had nothing to do with reducing the cost of fuel or on the dollar. For example, this thing is, we are paying in shillings, marketers, isn't it?
Yes.
The marketers are paying in shillings.
Yeah.
They are not paying in dollars.
Yeah.
So one would have thought then the forex should not have been an issue in this pricing. So the forex aspect should not have been an issue. Two, if the deal was a good one and the prices were better, then we would have said, okay, then the premiums also would have been good. So the cost would have been lower. But the reality is nothing, because that deal was about really something else, and the cost has not changed. It has gone up, the premiums I've told you, and the forex still is being somehow not being helpful. I think in that landed cost workings, they have been putting in the cost of the forex. And other costs have been included in this. When you have product coming in, that landed cost, if you look at the workings, there are a lot of figures. The cost of clearance at the port and port charges and so many things and freight and all those things. And so if you put in administrative costs and other charges, this is where people put in their things, and which makes things, cost of these things very expensive. But I still think the issue is the government needs to deal with the bigger picture. The bigger picture is we are in this hole because of the debt. So all these trips about trying to get investors is not critical. What is the most critical today is for the president to go and sit with those countries and those organizations and try and get the debt rescheduled. Make it easy for the government to settle, to pay the debts. That is critical. If we don't address the issue of debt, really, then I don't think we'll be able to resolve some of these crises that we are getting. We are getting, and nobody, you cannot talk of a conducive business environment for investors from outside when you have this kind of situation. Cost of energy, cost of power, all these charges. It's going to be difficult. I think the issue is about the debt, and in my view, we have not given sufficient attention. We have not seen discussions by government, either at bilateral level or multilateral level, to try address the issue of debt one way or the other. I think many countries have done that. Zambia is breathing now because of that discussion, and they've been given at least breathing space. Ghana, many countries do that. I think the focus should really be on that. Otherwise, we will not get out of this situation, because the dollar is the main problem. And the dollar is being made worse, not because of our exports being lower or imports being high only. But I think the primary reason is because of the need to service debt, which is in forex, in foreign currency.
You said that this was a rent-seeking deal to benefit a few people. Who are these?
Government fellows.
I mean, fuel is
It's a political statement.
I'm not I retired.
No, you have not retired.
I want to break that down because
that's why I retired.
Look, you import fuel so that you can sell to consumers who are usually private entities or private individuals. So who is this person who wants to facilitate something to be brought into the country?
You look at how the calculation of the landed costing is being done, and compare it how the calculation was being done when the OTS was in place, and you'll probably get some of the answers. So I think you need to do that homework for Kenyans.
I will do that, but who is that? Who is that beneficiary?
Yeah.
Sam, I think if you allow, I think it would be unfair to not mention some of things that I think have been the biggest issue when it comes to petroleum in this country. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that we very easily allow ourselves to get into political shenanigans when we talk about petroleum. And that is why the true stories of petroleum will never be known in an objective way. Because some of us seated here who are not politicians for now, maybe in future. Yes.
You're admitting your hand already.
No. I'm saying, because you see, in my training, I'm a political scientist.
Oh,
so
okay.
I never know. But what I wanted to say is there are conundrums within petroleum industry that we have not been able to be raveled either by government or the politicians out there. For instance, I'll tell you this. Sometimes we talk about taxes. Mm-hmm. The highest taxed product in Kenya today is petrol, which is at about 77 shillings. After the introduction of VAT, the increment has been around 22 to 25 shillings. In 2018, before the VAT, petrol was trading at 108 thereabout. Today, the petrol has doubled, literally, the price. But taxes have increased by about 25 shillings. How do you explain the increment? There are things that we must also be alive to. And the fact is, today, the global outlay of petroleum in this country, in the global outlay of petroleum production, is that 40% is produced by the countries we call OPEC. And OPEC have it in that most of their economies rely almost entirely on petroleum. And anytime petroleum prices goes down because of oversupply in the industry, the economies are at risk. So what do? They sit down and they cut production. When they cut production, they spike the demand. When they spike the demand, the prices go up. Today, as we speak with you, Russia accounts for 12% of world oil production. Remember, there is sanction on Russian oil. What does that do to the world demand? It still spikes the demand. And until that can be resolved across the globe, you realize that everybody across the world is crying. Does this mean that the country has nothing to do to cushion the mwananchi? I think the onus is on government to look for the mechanics on how to cushion the mwananchi. But the truth out there is the government has very little leverage when it comes to the shocks coming from outside. They can only...
But what is your opinion about the government-to-government deal that he questions?
My opinion, and this is my informed opinion about government-to-government deal, and this is why it is very hard to address these things without appearing like you're playing politics also.
Just give your answer.
It was ostensibly to stop the hemorrhaging of dollar in the country, because we were spending $500 million every month, and about 100 oil marketers were scrabbling for dollars every day. So every person would be all over looking for dollars. So what have we achieved what we were looking for? Yes or no? Yes, in that the depreciation of dollar, the shilling against the dollar, was at around 3%. Today we are talking about 1%. It has not stopped, but it stopped the quick hemorrhaging that was happening. The other issue was it was supposed to give a reprieve in terms of the payment. Has it done well? It has come with a cost. If you ask me, it has come with a cost because of the fixed premiums. When the prices oscillate and we find ourselves beyond the premiums, then we are doing well. When the prices go down and the premiums are higher, you'll find that even some small oil marketers may want even to leave our country and go use maybe Tanzanian route towards Rwanda and South Sudan. But it cuts two ways. If you look at it without the political lenses, you realize that it cuts two ways. It has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. What other options does the government have in terms of dealing with the crisis of petroleum in the country today? Unless the government gets money and pays the oil marketers subsidies on the spot at the point of subsidy, when they are announcing subsidy, it will not be feasible, because what subsidy will do, and it has done for some time, it would discourage so many people from the business. As the senator is saying, he was an oil marketer recently, but he had to drop. People have this belief that oil marketing is very lucrative. If I don't know whether I can give a cost structure in terms of how the profits are shared within the industry, so that people may understand, and that is part of what I was saying, is sometimes shrouding a lot of secrecy around petroleum, that today you mentioned you're in petroleum, people think you have a lot of money. If it was the case, the big companies like Caltex and Mobil, Exxon and BP would not be exiting this market as they were. So for every litre that is imported, it has a profit of 12 shillings and some cents. Out of these 12 shillings and some cents as given by EPRA, 4 shillings is given to the oil marketer, the person who imports that fuel. When they come here, there's 4 shillings which is given to the person who constructed the petrol station. You'll be surprised that most of these petrol stations you see with labels of the multinational do not belong to the multinationals. They are from private people. Like you go to your village and you develop a petrol station, and then it's given a franchise. So they give another 4 shillings. The other 4 shilling is given to the dealer. because they are not necessarily, the person who built the petrol stations is not necessarily the person dealing at the petrol station. And all this money we are talking about is net, is gross, is not net. Out of the 4 shillings. We have a problem in the industry today that is beyond now what Mwananchi is saying. And this is what will kill the industry in the long run. That the cost of fuel has more than doubled since 2018. But the profit margin that the people were getting in 2018 is what they're still getting. The cost of operating a petrol station has gone up over 70%. But the cost of, like now, I'll tell you, to transport a liter of fuel was given at 0.54 cents within Nairobi. That is way back in what we call COSOP study of 2019. To date, today, when the price of diesel has doubled, and McHugh, we transport that diesel using the same trucks, the cost still remains at 0.54. What is this doing to the guys in the value chain? It's that they're killing.
You know, Martin, you said something that the dollar was, I mean, the shilling was depreciating by 3%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now it's depreciating by 1%.
1%.
Are you sure about that?
No, that is, I read. This is what I've been reading.
Because I'm looking at the dollar at September last year was 120. In April, it was 132.
Okay.
So that's across 8 months, that's about 10% depreciation. Between April and now, it is from 132. I'm using the CBK rates, 132 versus 146. That's 14 shillings, which is about 10.6% in 6 months. Not much difference, really.
It simply slowed the depreciation. It did not.
Really.
I'm saying 10.6% depreciation in 6 months versus 10% in 8 months.
This is where...
Actually, the depreciation is faster.
This is what I've been reading, that G2G arrangement has eased the pressure on the Kenya shilling with a reduction in depreciation against the USD from a high of 3% per month to 1%.
That's not true. You see, I'm in business and we have been buying dollars. Let me tell you. 2021, 2022, the increase was very gradual. We had no problem. Suddenly now, even with the last 6 months, the situation has been crisis. We are making huge losses on Forex because of the way the shilling has gone from 140. In fact, the last 2 months, for example, it went from 143. My business is some things, invoices I booked at 143 just a couple of months ago. 150. We are now paying at 148. You know, we are not buying, you don't get it 146 in the, in the banks. So the situation, that has not helped the situation. But the global thing is what I'm very keen on. The global price of oil. 10 years ago, and they're there, the figure, the charts are there, all you go to any energy website. In 2014, it was at 90. It was 100 and actually 110, the global price for crude, per barrel. Today, it's at 90. So globally, in 10 years, it has changed the Brent by 3.4%. So the issue is not about the global price, really. There are other fundamentals in the country which are contributing to all these things which we have mentioned.
And which I agree with you. Let me just interject. Which I agree with Senator Kero. We as Parliament also must look at the taxes.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the taxes, it's there are several taxes on fuel that makes it also extremely expensive. But subsidy will not be an option because subsidy will have needed about 8.7 billion right now just for that purpose. So I think what to look at in terms of fuel and petroleum is on the taxes.
And I can help with the...
Do you think that is possible, really, Honorable Koech? Because that was promised by the President while he was campaigning in July 26th.
It's our responsibility as members of Parliament to look at that.
That's what I'm asking. Do you think it's going to happen? Because he promised that the 15 taxes would be reviewed. And indeed they were reviewed, only that it was upwards.
I will look at it.
Actually, if you look at the East Africa, you realize the level of taxation in Kenya.
Yeah.
We tax about, super petrol, we tax about 36%, whereas Tanzania is taxing 28%, Uganda 28%, Rwanda 20%. Diesel, we are taxing 32.4%, whereas Tanzania is doing 27.3%, and Uganda 23.4%. And Rwanda 27. Kerosene, we are doing 28.
Except that in Kenya, we have 4, 5, 6, 7 other levies, which other people don't have. That's where the difference is.
Of course, a super petrol, like I said, a super petrol, a liter of super petrol lands at 115.93. Again, a figure calculated by the powers that be. The taxes 79 shillings. And of course, if you add the oil marketing company's margins of 12 shillings 39 cents, you end up at 211. I was curious about the figures you're reading about the depreciation of the Kenya shilling against the dollar. Who's the author of that report?
The same report you're reading, the April report you're reading.
And when you make that calculation, it doesn't tally, really.
I'm not an economist. I cannot vouch for that.
Okay, all right. I want us to take a look at some feedback that has come to us from Kenyans, what they're saying this morning, so that you can quickly take a look at what's more on, should I say X. Babu Michael is saying that whereas the Kenya Kwanza government says oil prices are global, is it right for them to continue increasing taxes left, right, and center? Now VAT may rise to 18%. Can they reduce cost of electricity to lower production costs and further cost of living? All right. Student, you're saying that Honorable Koech Anauma Kipuliza, Kenya Kwanza gave promises while campaigning, and now you are in government, and the promises have become miracles. You blamed Uhuru Kenyatta for not performing these same miracles and promised Kenyans that you will fix that if elected. What happened? Of course, Kenyans are still asking those questions. And Honorable Koech, I want us to transition quickly. Well, there's Margo who is saying that crude oil price was at $111 per barrel in August 2022. Yet in Kenya, palm prices was below 160 shillings a litre, of course, with a subsidy. Crude oil price had dropped to $87 per barrel in August 2023. But in Kenya, palm price is at an all-time high, above 200 shillings. What to see were alama za dukuduku.